Welcome to another one of my videos. This is a book review on a book called Mysterious Phenomenon of the Human Psyche. I feel that the things going on in the world today with mind control, TV, propaganda, and all the conspiracy theories, Masonry, Satanism, I think we should start with doing human psychic research. Basically, 101. Well, I thought maybe we would take a slightly different direction on video number 4 because on several occasions I've mentioned the Illuminati and Satanism. And a friend of mine, Tim, said, Rick, people may just shut that out, maybe tuned out. You need to explain it a little better, what it is that we're talking about. And so I thought I'd start out with this book, Mysterious Phenomenon of the Human Psyche, written by a Russian scientist, published here, and the scientist's name is Leonid Vesely. I'm not good at pronouncing some of these. Notice the all-seeing eye on the bottom. That's the publishing company. Interesting. In the Masonic Bible, we have the all-seeing eye. On the dollar bill, we have the all-seeing eye. Mysterious phenomenon of the human psyche. So all this stuff is connected. So anyways, Leonid, I think I'd just read a little bit out of this book and tell you a little bit about what I think as we move along. It's an investigation into the human psyche, such as people believing in life after death, hypnotism, dreams. So let's just see where this takes us. So in future videos, when we're talking about Satanism and other issues, this pre-education here will help us move along. Anyways, to move along quickly here, I'm going to read. Since the death of Stalin in 1953, there have been many signs that the Soviet leadership, however haltingly, is trying to rejoin the human race. Stalin's megalomania saddled the Soviet mind for decades with ways of thought and feeling more and more alien to civilized humanity. As a result, there is in the Soviet Union a period which is likely to be known in history as the Stalin Gap. This is very important because we may wind up with the United States Gap really soon if this new world order comes into play and martial law and people get thrown into prison camps, and the big change comes that's possibly similar to what happened here in Russia. The decades in which the minds of Soviet population were cut off from Western civilization in myriad ways. The Stalin Gap begins with the ascendancy of Stalin over Trotsky in 1923. After the Russian Revolution. Until the 1930s. Once it became total, from 1923 to 1930, there is no let-up. It remains until his death in 53. So from 30 to 53, 23 years, more than that, almost 30, the Stalin Gap. Russia was cut off from the world. And in my previous videos, I mentioned during the Russian Revolution, when the Bolsheviks, the Jewish Zionism, occultic Satan worshippers, that's what they are, you're going to see here, killed a lot of the population, Christians, God-fearing people, destroyed all the Christian churches, and didn't destroy any Jewish temples. Almost 30 years, and they were cut off from the world. In 66, they say, million people were starved to death, shot, beheaded, who knows how horrible conditions, tortured. It was basically an insane asylum for 30-something years. Anyways, after about 1953, the concentration camps were emptied. The Soviet scientists, academias, teachers, writers who have been unpersons for 10 years, some for 20 years, unpersons. Is this going to happen in the USA? But they were alive, those who did survive. The book is written, published, copyrighted in 1965. Anyways, let's keep on going. Some background information that's kind of important. The Society of Psychical Research, SPR, was founded in London in 1882. This is very important for future reference. It was the purpose of the society, impartially to investigate claims of telepathy, clairvoyance, being able to see things at a difference or in the future or in the past, apparitions and haunted houses, and to study hypnotism. The so-called mesmeric trance, to inquire into various physical phenomena produced by mediums, and to inquire into possible survival of the human personality after death. You got it. Russian Revolution was taken over by the Bolsheviks. Jewish Zionists who worship Lucifer. They killed 66 million people, mostly Christians and others, I'm sure. Not Jews, and they didn't destroy the Jewish temples, but they demolished all the Christian temples. And they worship Lucifer. So they were trying to eliminate anybody who believed in God. Why? When they were worshiping Lucifer and sacrificing people to the devil. And they were telling people there's no God. It's kind of strange. Anyways, reading from the scientists, I'm just telling you what I see. From a strictly point of view, perhaps the most important of this literature is the Proceedings of the Society of Psychical Research in England. Very important. It moves from Russia to England, or did it move from England to Russia? Because England, the banksters, sent money and trained Lenin, Stalin, Trotsky, financed them to do the revolution. This was the bank in London. The same people who came to the United States in 1913 and created our Federal Reserve, which they own. So it's really not federal in the aspect that it's a USA bank. Anyways, the Proceedings of the Society of Psychical Research in England, continuously published since 1882, and a parallel, this is important, proceedings published by the American Society for Psychical Research almost as continually since 1890. So this is 1965, so from 1890 and 1882 in England and the United States, our scientists, unbeknownst and told to the citizens of the world, United States and everywhere else, they were studying this psychic research. Pardon me, but what did they learn, and is it dangerous? Let's move on. The greatness of the scientific achievement of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels rests in part on the fact that by revealing the true laws of social development, they created the prerequisites for the liquidation of mystical prejudices. Wow. The liquidation, 66 million people killed, so they could get rid of religious mystical prejudices. They call it prejudices, I call it believing in God. The Soviet Union had declared relentless war on superstition. God. Well, and they killed 66 million people. I think we would need a God. Sorry for my ad-libbing here. Our whole social structure, this is the scientist speaking, with its systematic day-by-day dissemination of political and scientific knowledge among the masses, is directed to the total extirpation of pseudo-scientific doctrines concerning nature, man, and society. Again, they were trying to eliminate a religion and God and Jesus from society. Just a cold-hearted, lawful laws that they made. Basically, people were slaves and they were kings. Nice for them to get rid of God and say that. The laws of man or the laws of God? What do you want? What do I want? Me, I want the laws of God. Obviously, the laws of man can't be trusted. Thank you, George Bush. Thank you, Obama. And thank you to all these other evil people like Rothschild, Rockefeller, Morgan, and many people. Moving on. Let's get this thing going here so you can catch it. The struggle against popular and scientific superstition cannot and must not be waged apart from anti-religious propaganda. So they're saying they can't wage this war against superstition, believing in God, apart from the religious aspect. So long as religion exists, so long will superstitious notions, believing in God, incompatible with the attainment of science, remain secreted in the minds of some men, and from time to time spring to life again. So what are these people telling us, these communists that took over Russia? It's incompatible with the attainment of science. And if some of it will remain secreted in the minds of some men, and from time to time spring to life again. They need to eliminate that. They're saying it here. Moving on. One evening, after several unsuccessful attempts at mental suggestion with numbers and playing cards, scientist Richard asked Lonnie, out of nowhere, he's having this lady look at cards and guess what they are, you know, testing psychic abilities. And he said, "Where is Mr. Langios?" He was off someplace else. And she answered quickly, "He has burned his hand. Why was he so careless when pouring?" And the scientist working with her said, "Pouring what?" "Some red fluid in a small flask. His skin swelled up immediately." So he was testing her with some cards to do readings to see if she could have any psychic ability. And he just spontaneously said, "Where is this other scientist?" And she said, "This is what happened, a psychic experience." So it turned out that when the scientist 2 hours later contacted Langius and found out that in pouring bromine in a flask while conducting a chemical experiment, had been in a hurry and careless. This red fluid spilled on his hands and forearm, instantly forming a rather large blister. Lonnie, the person who was asked where he was, had no access to the library and had no way to know at that moment he had spilled his hands. Just an instance of psychic abilities by the same people who want to say there's no God. So that's what this book is about, mysterious phenomenon of the human psyche. Moving on. When you hypnotize people, I guess people have seen that, you can swing a pendulum or shine a light. Instead of reacting to the magnetic passes with twitches, convulsions, and spasms, the young shepherd, Victor, disclosed only fatigue and falls peacefully asleep. So the scientist was trying to hypnotize this guy, and he just got tired and fell asleep. So the scientist was agitated, and he makes what is known as post-hypnotic suggestions, that is, orders the sleeper to execute a series of specific tasks upon awakening, and on their return to normal consciousness, the patients do indeed execute the task suggested to them while they were asleep. So while they hypnotized people, put them in a trance, and said, you know, when you wake up, you're going to pour that cup of tea. And then the person wakes up, and without being told, walks over and pours a cup of tea while in a trance. That's very important, this hypnotic information, because it is my opinion, and I think we'll prove it by many of the books we get into, but this has to be the basic 101 in psychic, what I call mind control by the government Black Ops program. Since 1965, you know, 60 years, they've come a long ways, and the things they can do now, it's too much to believe. But I think we're going to find out it's actually going on. Professor Byard perfected the method of verbal hypnotism, supplemented it by following auxiliary method. The subject was asked to fix his gaze upon some brilliant object. Fixation tires the eyes of the subject. This helps with verbal suggestion of sleep. Let me just throw a little thing in there that might be noted. So fixation and fatigue gets you in a trance. They're putting fluoride in the water everywhere and all kinds of other drugs in people. And the fluoride makes people lethargic, slow, lower IQ. I wonder if it's assisting to make people at large more susceptible to hypnotizing, mind control. And then, of course, they're addicted to TV and stuff. I just wonder, how advanced are our scientists, Satanists? What evil things would they do? Boston bombing, Sandy Hook, Oklahoma bombing, 9/11, World War I, World War II, attack all the Arab countries, politicians illegally get into office by fixing the computers. How far will these people go? These scientists who know stuff that you don't know. Moving on. For hypnotizing human beings, verbal suggestion of a sleepy state remains the chief method. Remember, this is written by a scientist. Among these may be visual fixation of brilliant objects, the sounds of metronome or buzzer, light strobing of the skin, or so-called passes, the method used in old-fashioned magnetism. Passes are repeated hand movements of the hypnotist in front of the face and along the body of the subject being put to sleep. Persons of heightened suggestibility, hysterics, alcoholics, and others. Remember, many people are all being fed drugs. Your little child jumps up in school and is a little excited. They put them on drugs. Everybody knows this. Does that make them susceptible to mind control? Some form of government program. Over in England they call it common purpose. Here we have programs that they teach the students in a mundane, hypnotizing fashion. Makes you wonder. Persons of heightened suggestibility, alcoholics, hysterics, and others may be plunged into hypnotic sleep very quickly by the use of sudden, powerful stimuli. There you go, the drugs. Okay, moving on. According to the findings of authoritative hypnologists, as high as 80 to 90% of the subjects are susceptible to hypnosis. 80 to 90%. If you go online, you're going to find out that, statistically speaking, some of the researchers like myself and many others know this, and you can find out the information. It is determined that almost 85% of the population is under some kind of form of mind control. And if you try to talk about these subjects with them, they will get agitated and angry and tell you to shut up. This is 2013. This was 1965. Written by a scientist. Interestingly, the highest degree of receptivity to hypnotism is found in 7 to 14-year-old children. The lowest is in old people. You ever sit down and watch your kids watch cartoons? Then they're getting drugs from the school because they're alert, energetic, hyperactive. The highest degree of receptivity to hypnosis is found in 7 to 14 years old. And you know the people that are running our government, they know all this. The science is way beyond this 1965 book. The suggestion of satiety, that's however you say it, mock feeding, in other words, suggesting to somebody you're hungry, brings on an increase in the number of leukocytes in the blood. So I guess when you get hungry, your body reacts and lets you know it's hungry. So just in hypnotism, suggesting that you're hungry, your blood actually changes and makes you think you're hungry. They've tested this. Conversely, the suggestion of hunger leads to, as actual does, hunger. So when you wake up, you're hungry. The suggestion suggested sensation of cold brings on paling of the skin, shivering, and goose flesh. And as happens when one is really cold, there is a considerable increase, 30 or more percent, in the respiratory exchange of gases. That is, in the quantity of absorbed oxygen and secreted carbon dioxide. So when you're being hypnotized or in a trance, or even maybe the TV, you can't see it, but you could be all mind controlled. They're telling you you're cold, and you actually start shivering. And this mind control thing is a scary thing. That's the reason for me choosing this book as the fourth book. I think it needs to be known that this is a reality, and this Black Op projects and some future books very soon that I do here. Without this background information, you'll actually find it difficult to believe what they can do and what they are doing. So we need the basics. If one touches a specific area of the skin with a wooden stick and at the same time suggests that this area is being seared with a red hot iron, an actual burn, reddened skin, a blister, and so forth will eventually appear at the part burned in mock fashion. The touch of a pencil accompanied by the suggestion that is a powerful blow leads to the appearance of a blue mark, a bruise, on the spot touched just with a pencil. The scientists wrote this book. I didn't make this up. This is page 75, Mysterious Phenomenon of the Human Psyche. You can buy this book probably on a used book site like Abe Books online for $2. Anyways, the power of suggestion can provoke a burn only in those subjects who had suffered at least one actual burn caused by contact with some hot object. So what that tells me, when these kids were watching cartoons and go to school and are being taught things you don't know what they're teaching them, they have been induced with that thinking, and in the future the powers that be can bring back that thinking again and action at will. Where are they taking us? Where did they take Russia for 30 years and kill 66 million people? Gosh, I hope us in the United States and other parts of the world aren't about to experience what Russia experienced. A hypnotized person loses his ability to concentrate his attention on anything in the world around him, and for this reason does not take active or personal notice of the influences from the outside on his sensory organs. It is understandable that this helpless state, the hypnotic, should fall into the power of the hypnotist, having lost his independence and freedom of action. Oh my God. Is this why the government is rampant doing whatever it wants? Are they comfortable in the fact that they know they have 85% of the people under mind control? Did the Batman shooting guy, the people in Sandy Hook, the people in Boston, were they under, and it's been reported they were under drugs and under psychiatric care. What can they do? Oh my God. 2 local residents, female students at a factory school, 20-year-old P and 16-year-old Z, first one and then the other received anonymous letters in which there was scrawled that for such and such an action, they must have done something somebody didn't like, on such and such a day and hour, they would be punished with illness, writhing, loss of voice, speech, deafness, pains in the head and arms. At the indicated times, all this was fulfilled. A post-hypnotic suggestion was sent to them in a letter, and they actually got the illness. It remains to be added that several girls who visited the patients and witnessed their convulsions showed the same hysterical symptoms in weakened form, and this was nothing but the beginning of a real psychic epidemic that was fortunately extinguished in short order. So when they're telling us on the news about swine flu and all these other things, can they induce a hypnotic condition that creates the actual illnesses, just like touching you with a pencil and telling you it's a hot iron and you get a red burn? This is scientific study. People don't believe in Satanism? Oh my God. Today, treatment by suggestion in hypnosis or in the waking state rests on a solid foundation. This is now 2013. I wonder how much it rests on a solid foundation now. Therapists apply suggestion with full understanding of why it works and which nervous mechanisms are set in operation therewith. In the past, the therapeutic power of verbal suggestion was used blindly without understanding and what it was really all about. For this reason, it frequently brought more harm than good to the patient. What if they want to harm you? They know how to do it, don't they? In this case, they were trying to bring about globalization, the New World Order, with Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and the Zionism ruling the world, and they have at their disposal these mind control tools. The magic exorcisms of the magician, the incantations of a sorcerer were. So the old magic that everybody thought was magic. In essence, a naive form of verbal suggestion, based on the superstitious ideas which nevertheless sometimes achieve their ends. Autosuggestion frequently functions side by side with suggestion. When a person himself believes in the miraculous power of some remedy. Thus, autosuggestion explains, for example, the action of many so-called sympathetic remedies, which frequently exhibit a therapeutic effect. Professor Ferris cured fever with the aid of a piece of paper on which 2 words were scrawled, against fever, and each day the patient had to tear off 1 letter. There are known instances of cures affected by bread pills. In other words, if you tell somebody the pill's going to cure them, psychically they'll cure it because they believe it. So when you tell somebody they're going to get well from a fever by tearing a piece of paper off against fever, they slowly cure themselves mentally, psychologically. All this is explained by the fact that some people, due to their unusual suggestibility, it is possible. So because they believe, and that brings us to prayer. Prayer to God. Prayer for your fellow men. Apparently they want to make sure you don't know that. Well, they have big fires like the Bohemian Grove and a big owl and throw a baby into the fire worshiping Lucifer. They believe in their Satanism stuff. They can manifest all the reality of that if all this is true. And if we believe in God, in goodness, in caring for one another, we manifest all that. But they're trying to say it's superstition and get us not to use this power we have. Whether you believe in God is not the point. This is scientific fact that this stuff works. On the treatment of warts by hypnosis, Bruno Bach gives the following results he achieved. 55, that's 30.7%, out of 55 out of 179 patients were cured in 1 hypnotic session. The warts went away. 32 out of 179 in 2 sessions. 8 in 3 sessions. And 3, altogether 98 people, 54%, more than half, patients were cured by hypnosis to get rid of warts. And again, I apologize for my poor reading. I hope I'm getting better. Needless to say, such results are obtainable only when the illness itself is of a psychogenic nature. So a lot of illnesses are created by our minds. That is, it has been produced by some mental shock. We're going to get into that. They do intentionally mentally trauma, torture, and shock people and program them to be even assassins. Our government does this. I've read books much more detailed than this and current, but you wouldn't believe those books until you hear this one first. There's a method to my madness. T. Rama calls special attention to the fact he has achieved his aim by repeatedly repeating the same thought, the same sentence endlessly. It is just this tireless repetition of the very same thing that constitutes the principal condition for the formation of the dominant. and it is the secret of beneficial action of autosuggestion. Well, I say it's also a tool if they want to do something bad to us. They repeat and they repeat, global warming, global warming, global warming. And when that's proved a hoax, climate change, climate change, climate change. Too much population, people have to die. Too much population, people have to die. Too much population, people have to die. The United States owes too much money. We have to suffer. We have to give. We have to bend over. Even though we used all that money to finance all the wars for these banksters who loaned us the money, you owe it. Yeah, we borrowed money from the banksters to fight wars for them with our young men. And then after we won the war for them, we owe them the money we borrowed from them to fight their war. So now the people have to be enslaved. You gotta love this auto-suggestion stuff. A secret was known from ancient times to the Eastern peoples, to the Christian zealots, to which applied the psychotherapists in the theoretical anchored and scientific form. This stuff has been around throughout history. Take a rosary, you know, like the Catholics do. And they pray and they just go to one bead, then the next bead, and the next bead, and they say the prayer over and over and over. This stuff is ancient. According to which you recite the prayer at least 3,000 times a day at first. Afterwards, the daily repetition of this prayer will gradually increase to 12,000. I suppose that would program that in your brain. Okay, we're almost done with this episode. Let us see into what prosaic form this method of frequent repeated autosuggestion has been transformed in contemporary psychotherapy. According to View, I can't say these Russian scientists' names, the definite autosuggestive formula should be worked out for every separate case. This formula should be appropriate to the given case and be spoken by the patient himself affirmatively and in the present, not in future tense. Let us assume, for instance, that a man addicted to wine drinking should want to cure himself of this addiction by means of autosuggestion. He must utter the autosuggestive formula in the following form. I have taken a pledge. Not only will I not only not to drink, but not even to think of wine. Now I have completely freed myself of this ruinous temptation, and never think of it. And you repeat that, and you repeat that, and you repeat that. If only there is concentration on it, then autosuggestion can be effective in a number of cases. So there you have it. About half the book. I'll do the next episode. I'll do the other half, which has topics such as automatic movements, extrasensory perception, telepathy, a little bit more of how far in 1965, and how serious the scientists were into all this activity. Now, if somebody were to take this knowledge and use it for ill will towards man, with a goal like the New World Order and globalization and getting rid of God and Christianity and Islam and all the other religions, and having everybody swear allegiance to Lucifer, and sacrificing, throwing children into burning fires at the Bohemian Grove in California, videoed by Alex Jones, which was photographed and you can look up and watch and videoed. If these people are that evil, would they use these abilities against us, against the population? I think the question answers itself. We already can see that they do. Charlie Harper on 2.5 Men sleeps with a different girl in every show. Seinfeld for years, my favorite show, everybody's, slept with a different girl every show. They've been taking us down this road of when Moses brought the Hebrews out of Egypt and had their first big sexual drunken party. And when Moses came down the mountain with the 10 Commandments on the tablets and smashed them because of it, there's been this battle, apparently, between God and some factions that split off from God. The sons of God found the women fair, and apparently they had sex with the human women God created, and they came up with a new breed of people. This is in books in the future here we're going to review. And these people had a different DNA called blue bloods. So most of us are red-blooded people. So what are blue-blooded people? Why do these royalty of England and Germany and the hierarchy and the Illuminati and the Jewish Zionism people married into these kings and queens? Is there something different about their DNA? Is that why they're coming up with these healthcare plans and they want everybody to get a sample of their DNA? Some very interesting questions. The answers have probably scared the pants off all of us. All right, Rick Merkel reporting. Let's see what happens next. All right, I'll continue with the mysterious phenomenon of the human psyche. Automatic movements. In 1848, there took place an event involving the Fox family in America, the city of Rochester. Members of the Fox family, father, mother, and 3 young daughters, sat around a table, placed their hands on it. The table moved, rocked from side to side, and began to emit crackling and tapping sounds. And if the participants in the seance recited alphabet words and whole sentences, if they recited the alphabet, words and whole sentences were composed of those letters whose enunciation coincided with the tappings. So if they said words, they got a tap, that was a selected word. These were accepted as messages from the other world by the superstitious participants of like seances. This is just research by a scientist of documenting events. Anyways, a couple of scientists here. These men drew attention to the scientific world of the so-called ideomotor acts, demonstrated that these acts explain all the movements of spiritualistic tables as well as many other mysterious phenomena of the same order. So in other words, if you put your hand on a table and subconsciously your hand would shake and move the table, is what they're saying caused it. It really wasn't some outside beings, even though it did spell letters and words and sentences. The people who are skeptics say it's just the ideomotor act. So let's move on. For the pendulum, for instance, what's going on here? It is this, the process of the cortical excitation, which is connected with the thought of any movement, forces us to produce automatic and corresponding movement. This is what is called the ideomotor act. In the given case, the subject can unconsciously execute barely visible rotary movements. So this particular scientist here is a skeptic, and he's writing it off to, even though you don't know it, you're being sincere, your subconscious mind is taking control. The fortune teller holds a thread with a ring tied to it over a cup on the brim of which letters of the alphabet are arranged. Gradually, the ring begins to swing in the precise direction the fortune teller expects. So he's saying possibly the fortune teller is rigging it, spelling hello, whatever. Here's a portion of his attitude. The pursuit of table turning, conversation with invisible beings, etc., he wrote in his personal, threatens to spread mysticism which can alienate many from a healthy outlook on things and reinforce superstition. So they don't want you to believe in this stuff. They're saying it would be unhealthy for you to believe in this stuff. These are the same folks that took over Russia and killed 66 million people, who are Satanists and practice throwing babies into the fire, worshiping Lucifer. I don't want you to believe in God. So I'm just saying in my thoughts. Thus, the only thing worth attention in the phenomena of swinging pendulums, roaming saucers, flying saucer reports are at an all-time high in 2013, and we'll get to that in other books. Tapping tables is ideomotor behavior. Explainable because your brain is doing it. It's not really happening. But can these everyday occurrences serve as scientific proof of the real existence of telepathy? So when you think somebody, which there's just thousands of, there's plenty of books, I've read many. On my website, rickmiracle.com, there's a page with all the books on psychic research that I've studied. And, you know, people have a psychic experience that they saw somebody die across the country, across the state. Then the phone rings and the person was in a car wreck and died. Brain broadcasting. They cannot serve as true cases because one cannot entirely rule out the possibility of chance coincidence. So somebody you know has a car wreck, bleeding to death, and you dream of it or think of it. You wake up and you're in a cold sweat. It's a chance coincidence. You believe that? Of two persons involved in the same experience at approximately the same time. Okay, then they did the card guessing thing, and it says here on page 130, twice in these experiments, all 25 cards were guessed correctly in consecutive order. 24 cards were guessed correctly 4 times, and 23 19 times. Okay, then one scientist is thinking of something. He's thinking of scissors. And the subject, these are scientists now, is having difficulty. Oh, I can't see it. Oh, no, it's foggy. All of a sudden she says, now I see it as something round, sparkling. Does it always sparkle? Now it is like a ring. It is again as if it's metal. It glitters like glass, metal, round, yet extended in length, as if it were a pair of scissors. Coincidence? Or did she read his mind? These experiments were especially successful when, to use her own expression, Mary was on the brink of sleep, and the drawings that were transmitted appeared in her drowsy consciousness in the form of visual images. I'm up to 137. So I'm going through this book pretty quick, just to give you some examples. Every sensation, every active movement must form waves, and the human head should radiate waves of great length. 30 kilohertz, like on your radio station, FM, AM, in the surrounding medium. Of course, the radio waves of the brain, it's all electrical, you're electrical, are very, 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 very weak. Apparently, humans can transmit them, and other humans can pick them up, vice versa. But the scientists, as of 1965, didn't have equipment to do it. Which I believe now, from my research and books that we will discuss in the future, they can pick them up. They can put images in your head. Like I said, this is 101 psychic stuff. Got to start somewhere. The human brain, during heightened activity, becomes the source of metric and especially decimetric, centrometric, different sizes. Electromagnetic waves. These brain radio waves sometimes display a periodicity that is variable lengths. It goes like this. So just like when you put yourself on a voice recorder and you see all those lines, the different tones, A, E, they have different frequencies. So your brain, when you're thinking, has different frequencies. Okay, the frequency of the oscillations recorded on the photographic tape correspond to the rhythm of the biocurrents entering into the contracted muscles from the central nervous system. 50 cycles per second. And then they have these arcarias with electromagnetic waves at varying great length, up to 6 kilocycles. Again, like FM radio, 1350, 101 FM, whatever. Professor Dana Alinsky demonstrated that under the influence of electromagnetic fields of low frequency, 50 to 100 cycles per second, one can stimulate isolated nerve and muscle tissue across distance and also heighten the excitability of the central nervous system. These scientists have proved that they can take different frequencies aimed at a person and excite different muscle tissue And this is 1965. It's gone way beyond this stuff here. Way beyond. Telepathy resembles communication which in effect is affected by wireless and radio and telethesia and television and telekinesis and telemechanics. So like I said, this is 1965. Okay, then a dowser. I'm a dowser. I have a website called webdowser.com. I've been studying this. By the way, I'm an electronic engineering technician. I worked at an aerospace company, me, Rick Miracle, for 10 years near the Space Center. So I'm not without education from school. I'm not without knowledge of electronics. Holding in his hands a simple forked branch of a nut tree, a man endowed with the aptitude for water divination can, by turning the branch, you can detect water. This goes back thousands and thousands of years. It's in old ancient textbooks. It's in hieroglyphics on the Egyptian temples. They walked around. They were looking for something, and the branch would twitch. Old science. Many water diviners, if they are within the field of influence, sense the presence not only of streams of underground water, but also of gas pockets, electric currents, and finally, they detect the presence of metal deposits and veins of ore. Stop any man from the electric company or the telephone company and ask him if he can dowse, and he'll smile and pull out his rods or wooden stick, and they find cables all the time using that technique. The reason I mention this and go to this book is because in the United States, in the world, well, in the United States in particular, in Alaska we have something called HAARP, H-A-A-R-P. It's a big transmitter. They bounce microwave energy off the ionosphere, and they heat it up, and they actually raise it hundreds of feet. The sky. They raise the sky. Do you think that's messing with stuff? But not only that, they can bounce it off the ionosphere and, let's say, hit Orlando where I'm at, and with certain frequencies they can actually alter my mood. They can make me insane. They can make me angry. They can make me calm. They can make me docile. This is why we're taking a look at this. Because the future books, the ones way beyond this that I'm going to do book reviews of, you need the basics before you can even grasp that. And what they're doing with the mind control now, the government, the Black Ops program, started in Russia. The United States found out about it. England found out about it. They started their own scientific teams at universities. That stuff was popular. Books were written. Then it disappeared, and it went into the Black Ops projects of the government. No budget on the Congress bills, you know. So you can't tell that they're doing it, but if you do some homework, you'll find out. And we're going to review some of the books written by people who, whistleblowers who escaped from this system, these mind control programs. And they went public and wrote books, and several of them were murdered. They died rather mysteriously, as you would imagine. Let's see what else we got here. Alright, well I think at this point I'm going to take a break, and I'll try to finish up the last portion of this book, episode 3, and let you ponder on all that for a second. But when you watch the video, it'll just be, you can pause it if you want to take a break. Thank you. Alright, well this will be the last episode. Mysterious Phenomenon of the Human Psyche. According to Kashvar's, these Russian names I can't say them, data, the diviner's organism is better than any existent physical instruments and reacts moreover to changes in ionizations to the descending electric currents. Back in 1965 and earlier, they didn't have any kind of instruments like they have today. Silicon chips and laptops and iPads and iPhones. So a person with a divining stick could find water. And there are books written by huge oil companies that, because it costs $1 million plus to drill an oil well, and if they do not discover oil, it's $1 million lost. So they even hired diviners, people with walking around with the stick that finds water but finds oil, to verify whether there was oil present or not. And apparently, statistically speaking, they were so good that They were paid huge amounts of money to work for the oil company, so they didn't drill any false wells. Now they do it with very sophisticated electronic equipment. They can just send an electrical signal through the earth and it bounces back and they can tell what's down there. Just imagine what they can do with electrical signals to our personal psyche, our electron-biological magnetic body. Anyways, I'll try to wrap this up and to give you a gist, hopefully, of what they did back then compared to what they can do now on future books I'll review that would blow you away if I didn't do this book. The Annuals of Medical Science record many cases of pathological sharpening of the senses. Dr. Brash, for example, tells of an apparently healthy man who suddenly noticed himself an unusual acuity of vision. He clearly distinguished the smallest objects at great distances. That would be like you being able to see a marble 5 blocks away. Under hypnosis, suggestion, apparently you can. In another experiment, Oservitsky was handed a soldered lead tube containing a note. The subject's version of it was, "This is a drawing of a man with a big mustache and thick eyebrows." So the subject had no idea what was in the lead tube with a note. Anyways, the man with a big mustache, thick eyebrows, there is no nose, he's in military dress, he looks like Pool Sadusky, and what was really in there, it was a picture of a knight without reproach and fear. So she described a knight in military dress, and it was a knight. She didn't say knight. Various small objects compactly wrapped in white absorbent cotton were put in plastic boxes. The tops were screwed down. Nobody at the experiment knew what the objects were placed in any of the boxes. Somebody private to the experiment did it who was not present at the experiment. And in our opinion, the first 10 trials is completely successful, while the 5th and 8th may be recognized as partially successful. It has a chart here showing the details. So my point is, they were doing these studies back in, well, this scientist wrote this book in '65, but the studies of this issue were back in since 1880, 82, that we just started the European Psychic Research Society, in 1889 when they started the American Research Society. And it's from my research, it all went underground just prior to World War II. And apparently Hitler was into all this stuff. And so as the name of these videos I'm making, Masonry and Satanism, you know, when as we read a little further, the Satanism part will show itself. But apparently these people who had controlled the purse strings of the world, the people who created the Federal Reserve in the United States by the Bank of London, who orchestrated the Russian Revolution and killed 66 million people, the people who controlled the world also controlled these universities and these scientists. These scientists did what they were told by these wealthy people. But in another sense, his organism, they would say, possessed a rare property of exuding some kind of energy or matter, fluid, ecoplasm, which produced at some distance from the medium himself mechanical action. Many times during seances, when an apparition, like a ghost, would appear, when the apparition disappeared, there was all kinds of jelly-like fluid on the table and on people's shoulders and stuff. Ecoplasm. So people who use telekinesis to move a pencil or something, an object, just like in Ghostbusters the movie, there was this jelly everywhere. So apparently it emanates from the human body, some plasma. Our blood is called plasma, by the way. And at the end of the seance, this clear jelly presents itself. Interesting? Okay, here we go. Nevertheless, he managed to articulate a few words, the purport which was that a current of some invisible substance had exuded from his body that Rudy could see this substance, and furthermore, he could control it. This was the guy who was in a trance and moving objects. And through its agency, shift a handkerchief. So the handkerchief's sitting on the table, the guy goes in the trance and he moves it, and this little plasma stuff comes out of his body. Astonishingly, the data seem to corroborate the medium's pretension, both as to the flow of the substance and its effect on the objects. This is not all. Other details are no less striking. In its entirety, the experiment seems to point to a discovery of paramount importance in the fields of physiology, psychology, and even physics. What could this unseen agency be that could perform the mechanical task? It's like an invisible arm protruding out from you at will. I want to show you a little picture. The brain is composed of two parts. There's the right brain and the left brain. Very important to know that. The left brain is the operating system that I'm using right now to talk to you. The right brain is the brain that's the subconscious. That when you go into a trance, that sees a mile away, that sees across the country, that communicates with the dead. That's the subconscious, that's the right brain. Scientists know this. This is science fact. You can look it up. I encourage you. More and more people in this world prefer not to believe, but to know. So if you can't prove it, I don't believe it. Well, the fact is, they took it out of society and they don't want to teach it to you anymore and tell you about all this research. If you knew about all this research, you might believe a little differently. Even the church itself had to reckon with this and strives, therefore, to take over popular education. Notice the government and the church and everybody's taking over the schools. Think they may not want you to know something? And then the black op programs, they're able to mind control people. Program into people to be assassins. Look at the like I said, the Batman movie shooting, Boston bombing, Sandy Hook, all kinds of things. You have to ask yourself, what technology do they have now? And I've read books, much, much more high-tech than this, but I chose to give you this one before I gave you the real meat and potatoes. The one that would really shock you, scare you. It has long been known that in deep hypnosis, the skin loses its sensitivity to pain. In the opinion of these hypnotologists, this manifestation allegedly takes place because the sensitivity to pain in the hypnotic, the person being hypnotized, is transferred from the skin to the surrounding air, forming a sensitive layer a distance of several centimeters from the body. So when I am consciously talking to you, you can prick me with a pin and my arm will hurt. In a trance, you have to prick me about here and I'll feel the pain. So in a trance, my auric body, it's a distance from this body, is my consciousness. That's why it can see. It can leave me and go see things. See through a wall, anything. And they can control this now. Technology's gone that far. Okay. The sensitive layer which has been formed allegedly moves increasingly away from the body, and from it formed a fluid double of this slumbering, hypnotic ghost and phenomenon. The experimenter himself is able to detect the location of the double with the help of a sharp pin, and he can tell you where it is. Alright, with that said, I'll just be really quick. I'm going to do this book. Tim Rifat, Remote Viewing. The government puts people in chairs, like little cockpits in a plane, trances them with drugs or hypnosis. They leave their body, let's say it's in Washington, the Pentagon, and that second body goes to Russia, China, wherever they might have a nuclear missile plant, and spies on the enemy. Tim Rifat's a whistleblower. You can see his videos. See the eye? You can see his videos on YouTube. The Cult of the All-Seeing Eye. Now we're going to get back to the Illuminati and all this other stuff, and it's going to have some different sense. Mysterious detectives, psychics helping policemen find murderers. You see why I did that other book first? Psychic warriors. David Morehouse. He's another one of the people that worked on the inside. Trained, was a military man. He has gifted, so the Army or Air Force, whichever department he was in, Air Force, I sent him over to the psychic department, and he sat in the cockpit chair and went and did a lot of spying. The stories he tells you in this book, wow. Blue blood, true blood. Stuart Swervel. I read this book. See my little tabs I put on there? We're going to do that book. But before I did all these books, I felt we had to do Psychic Phenomenon 101, which we just did. The stuff that I know about, the stuff that you need to know about, that they can do now. They can aim microwave transmitter, even through your cell phone, modulate a signal, through the TV. They can make you hear things that you think is your own thoughts. They can program you. They can put you in a trance and make you do things. Maybe kill somebody. Maybe kill yourself. Maybe turn you off. Anyways, they're microchipping kids and animals. Now you've heard of this, I'm sure. And with this little transmitter inside your body, with these skills and knowledge that they have, they can know where you are. They can know what you're thinking. They can make you think what they want. They can turn you off. They can send a frequency, and you plop over dead. That's what I think. And that's what these books. And these, I've read 150 on my website, rickmiracle.com. Go to the books I've read page. There's one whole section for psychic research, about 50 books. And then another whole section, conspiracy theories and secret societies and history, religious and all that. That's another 50 books. There's 100 books there. And I want to do a book review, even if it takes 150 whatever book review videos that I'm making. I want people to wake up and realize that these forces, this knowledge that they have, they're not using to our benefit, just the opposite. And I think that's important. When I discuss the Illuminati, the Freemason Society, the Banksters, the Rothschilds, all this stuff, they have the money. They know about all this stuff. Don't you think you ought to know? Especially if they don't want you to believe in God and understand how prayer works. But they're going to have religious satanic ceremonies where they call and worship to Lucifer and throw a baby in the fire. Look at that. Remember the old ancient civilizations and all over the world, South America, they had human sacrifices. Don't you want to know what that was really all about? It's ancient knowledge. And the people who have the Illuminati societies, the illumined ones, they know this stuff. And they have tried to keep it blocked from society. Anyways, Rick Mariko reporting. You decide. Thank you. God bless.